there if you need anything.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. She's walking away.
Just another side of the room, so I don't cough it.
I'm a little bit of a mess. I'll just tell you up front. I took my son to the urgent care today because he has an ear infection following our sinus infection. And I swear I just get back to the office from taking him to the urgent care for an ear infection. And now I think I have an ear infection. I can't hear and my ears are ringing and they're popping. So please bear with me. You know, what a wild ride this has been. Dave is taking him to another doctor to get a different, anyway, I will get medicine and be on the mend, but I am having a little bit of trouble talking and hearing tonight because my ear is fucked up. And then what I'm going to do is rest this whole weekend and get better. I took antibiotics, so the doctor was like, I don't know why you would have an ear infection now. So anyway, I'm going to try to get through class tonight. You know me, I power through. It's just been on and on and on this season. So Nick and I are going to get better. If you see me kind of moving my jaw, I'm just trying to get my ear to unlock a little bit. Welcome to session 2. We're going to practice magic tonight, and I'm here for it. And like I say, I don't like to cancel class because I really spend, I don't know if it matters to you or if you notice it, but I spend a lot of time preparing for class. I have been a teacher since I was 21. And so I don't like to postpone class, not only for you, but because so much goes into it that I don't want to redo all of I'm in that zone, you know, I'm in that mindset, and I want to share with you because tonight's topic is so powerful. And I'm going to try to share with you some of the indigenous roots of what we're talking about, but I'm also going to really try to translate that ancient practice of the despacho, which, by the way, despacho means offering. Okay, so there's 3 aspects to tonight's class. Okay, that for me are very important. And we've been sick way too long, by the way, in case you don't know, in Southern California, it has never been this cold that any of us remember for winter time when we're not used to it. So I think that's why we've been sick for so long, but we're on the mend. There's 3 aspects to tonight's class. The first is I want to talk about the concept of the 4 elements. One of my intentions to bring to you this year in practicing magic, and if you're new, is anybody new tonight to class? So heads up, 7 up, I'm going to not be focusing on the feed for the first hour and 15, hour and a half, because for me it allows me to completely focus on the teaching, and then I'll get to your questions at the end of class. So if you're new and you're asking questions as you're going and you're like, this lady's not even noticing me, I deliberately don't look at the feed because it gets us sidetracked, and most members prefer for me to just focus on the class content for the first 90 minutes and then give you that last half hour just completely focused on you and your questions. So that's my intention tonight too. I have a lot to get to. So if you are new, welcome. Really excited to have you. That's kind of the way it flows, okay? You can also leave the feed for the first 90 minutes if you want to focus too, or you can stay and chit chat with everybody who's in the feed. And I have no preference. I don't judge you. When I'm taking a class, I need to focus. But some people really can do both and multitask, and you have a different attention span than I do. So you do you, whatever works for you. Okay. And but that's how it's going to be. So if you ask questions now for me, I'm not going to get to them until the end of class. So I would say hold your questions for me. Alexis and Karen, though, are in the feed, so if you have technical questions, they can certainly help you. Okay. So let's go back to kind of the beginning. I'm going to talk to you about the 4 elements because part of my intention for living magic this year, and you may love it, you may not, I hope you love it, is sometimes it's really good to go back to your basics. And every time I teach you the basics, because I'm almost 50, I'm turning 50 in August, right? But and I've been doing this work since I was 18. So I've been doing it for a minute, 32 years. I never teach the basics the same way twice. I just don't, because I'm new to it again and again and again. In Buddhism, we call this the beginner's mind. And I'm actually going to close the feed because even for me, especially when I'm not feeling good, it can be a little distracting. So I'm going to close the feed, but I'll be back with you at the Q&A portion later on. The beginner's mind in Buddhism is this concept that no matter how many times you learn something, there's still something new to gain from it. Now, some people will say, well, I don't want to hear about the elements again. I've been doing this a long time too, and that's boring. But I don't think the way I'm going to talk to you about them tonight is the same because of part 2 of tonight's content, which is I want to come back to an archetypal discussion. Archetype meaning overarching type, right? Like these are the big figures. Carl Jung is famous for his concept of the archetypes. But the major arcana of the tarot, which you learned from my teacher Lori this month, has all of these archetypal figures: the Fool, the Hierophant, the High Priestess. Tonight I want to talk to you about the Magician. It's actually my life path card, my life destiny card, as Lori would call it. If you're a 110 life path, and if you don't know what that means, go back to that bonus class and she'll teach you. If you're a 110 life path like me, that's one of your soul destiny cards. I'm the Magician, and the archetype of the Magician is somebody who is here to learn how to use all of the tools. If you look at the major arcana card of the Magician, which I don't have right in front of me, but we looked at it together in the class. The Magician is a figure. He's got the infinity symbol over his head, and in front of him is a table, and he's got all tools of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water, which are, according to Plato, ancient Greek philosopher, which, by the way, we know that Plato was teaching mystery school because Plato was Atlantean. And so Plato was teaching all kinds of things that were like off the charts weird for the ancient Greeks. He was teaching science and math, and philosophy, but he was also teaching magic. So we know that Plato was an alchemist. We know that Plato was teaching mystery school. It's part of the reason why I'm so proud to be Greek. And, part of my lineage is North African, Egyptian, my physical lineage. So I'm Atlantean too, by blood and also by energetics. I really do believe I came through this timeline first as an Atlantean, right? So we Atlanteans came in to figure out how do we take earth and air and fire and water and make matter, right? How do we take ideas and concepts and manifest them in the physical world? So I want to talk about the Magician archetype and how that relates to the elements. I've never really gone into a deeper dive of that. And the whole reason I want to do that with you is because tonight's class content, the Living Magic content, is about despacho. And it's one of the reasons why you have this little pot in your tools, which you can use in a couple of different ways. And I'm going to show you all the different ways to use it tonight. I'm actually really excited about it. Despacho, literally in Spanish, is an offering. It's a gift. And we make despacho. Now I'm nervous not to be in the feed just in case I miss anything critical, but I'm not going to be focusing on the feed. Despacho is a gift back to the earth. What's fascinating to me, truly, is that in our culture, we don't do this. And by our culture, I mean like kind of Western culture. In the US, we don't go around making offerings. My favorite musician is Mose, M-O-S-E. And I'm friends with one of his co-musicians, Mattia Kali. If you're on Instagram with me, you should check out my stories. So Mattia had let me know that they were coming out with a new track. I shared it today in my Instagram story, and she reshared my share of it. And Mose, every year Mose goes on like a sabbatical. He kind of goes underground a little bit to incubate some new music. And he's brilliant as a producer. Risueño is his label, and you can follow him on SoundCloud. So I became friends with Mattia. She and I are both Greek. We're both medicine people. And so I'm always kind of connected to her. And his new track is called Offering, or Offerings. And I thought it was so cool. I just reshared it today. I'm like, it's so beautiful, Mattia, that this track I'm sharing from one of my favorite musicians, both of my favorite musicians, Mose and Mattia Kali, and you can follow them on Instagram. They're brilliant. You've been listening to Mose for a long time, whether you realize it or not, because Mose and Mattia are all over my SoundCloud playlist. They do ecstatic dances in Guatemala and different parts of the world. So Mose is somebody you should be following, especially if you like high frequency music. I leave Mose's playlists playing in my house almost 24 hours a day. I have several on SoundCloud, and you can find those there. But I just thought it was really timely and kind of interesting that Mose releases this track, this offering track, on the day that we're going to be talking about offerings. So I don't think the timing is accidental. So you may want to play that in the background on your SoundCloud or Spotify or however you find your magical music while we're having class together, just to kind of get you, settle you into that vibration and that frequency, because there's a connection between all the things that we're doing. And I think it's really magical. So the magician archetype, the 4 elements, and what it means to create an offering to the earth. Now, I do want to tell you, a lot of different ancient cultures have created this concept of offerings. And it's one of the things, like if I could really change something about Western modern culture, one of the things I would change, there's a lot of things I would change. I would get us off our electronic devices, ironically, because I spend most of my time on mine. But one of the things I would change about our Western culture is I would help us reestablish our connection to nature, to our great mother, to Gaia. I really do believe that it's the reason we have so much illness and disease is because we're disconnected. I was sharing a story with Nick today. Usually I have music in the background, but today I just don't, because I just got back from the ER with Nick and it's been too busy today. But usually I have music going for you. I think it's okay. I think we're okay. If they would like it, we can try to turn something on for them. I'll turn you on. Actually can't probably turn it on from here. I don't know if I can. You want me to see if I can do it? Want me to do it? Let me see if I can do it from here. I might be able to go to my playlist that has it on there. I'm in love with it. I just think it's so beautiful. I have 100 playlists on SoundCloud, so let me get to the right one. Here we go. And then you know how to turn it up and down, right, Alexis, on the players, the Sonos players?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see if that comes up. Okay, so I was telling Nick the story today, so I'll share it with you. So my primary care doctor, who's really a brilliant physician, has been my primary care doctor since I was a teenager, was my mom's doctor before she died, still is my dad's doctor, is my kid's doctor. He's about to retire, which breaks my heart. But one of the things he does every year is he takes a full month off from his practice and he goes to Bimini, which is off the eastern seaboard of the United States. And he goes there to work with dolphins. And, you know, after every one of my appointments, he usually makes a little bit of space just to talk to me because we love talking story with each other. And one of the things that he shared with me about, because I said, well, why do you go for a month every year to work with the dolphins? Like, is it just because you love dolphins? And he said, no, it's because dolphins, if we can figure out how to understand them and make a deeper connection with dolphins in science, dolphins can sense cellular changes in the human body before they show up on tests. And I said, can you give me an example of that? And he said yes. It was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, he went to Bimini for one of his studies, and it's all medical doctors who go. And he said one of them was a woman who's been with us as part of our research group for the last 5 or 10 years. She was trying to get pregnant. She finally got pregnant. And he said, she told me she was pregnant, but she had just found out. She said, don't tell anybody else on the trip because it's so new. You know, when you're just newly pregnant, you kind of don't want to tell anybody, like, I don't know, you don't want to jinx it. So she told him, I'm pregnant, but don't tell anybody else in the study. He's like, I won't say anything, but congratulations, right? So they go out on their boat, their research boat. And he said, the first day out, all the dolphins are circling around the boat. And he's like, we're all kind of looking like, what's going on? And he's like, they do recognize us year after year. They remember us. And, so it wasn't so weird that they were circling. But he said they were circling around her. And he said one by one, the dolphins jumped and there's a term for it, but they were like pointing at her stomach. They were the tip of their nose was going to her stomach, and then the next one would come up and the tip of the nose was going to the stomach, and the next one came up and the tip of the nose went to the stomach. And he said, I looked over at her because he said the whole reason we're studying dolphins is because they recognize cellular changes before tests show up, before anything else shows up. And he said the whole research team was like, are you pregnant? And she was like, I can't believe I'm being outed by dolphins. I mean, she was like 4 weeks pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, would barely show up on an ultrasound, booping, right? Or there's a word for it. Anyway, and he was like, see, I didn't tell anybody, but the dolphins knew, because they can detect, again, cellular changes before they show up on tests. So he's interested in what it could mean for cancer research, because cancer happens on the cellular level before there's any changes in the physical body and before tests detect it. So could dolphins detect if someone has cellular changes that are not available on tests? So that's his, as a researcher, that's his area of expertise and his area of interest, which I think is beautiful. I tell you this because I want to riff on this for a second, and you'll understand why tonight's class is so important to me. Each one of these session 2s has some connection to my heart, soul, and spirit. Session 1 is beautiful. I love it. I love astrology. Session 3 is awesome. I love crystals. Session 4 is cool. I love sound healing. You know, I'm behind all of it. I'm here for all of that. Session 2 is my little gift to you each month, and I hope you enjoy it. Some will connect with you more than others. But there was a moment when my neurologist looked at me and said, if you had been born in Central or South America instead of California, you probably would never have had MS. And that really landed with me. And she said, if you had gotten more vitamin D, if the sun had been different, at a different angle to you, if you had been outdoors more, you would have been less likely, she said, to have received MS than people in North America. And it just reinforced to me, we have such a connection with nature, right? That the sun itself and the amount of sun you receive and the angle of the sun can dictate even whether or not you end up experiencing a very serious, irreversible, neurological disease like I have. Now, I can't go back and be born in Brazil, but it's fascinating because it underscores the importance of our connection to nature. Now, it is related to vitamin D deficiency. It's fascinating, right? Now, she's like, I can't guarantee it, but you would have been far less likely to end up with MS. When a doctor tells you that, there's a little bit of like, oh shit moment. Now, I get more sun now, and I'm very healthy, so maybe there's a correlation and a causation. What my doctor told me is, and I'm telling you this, what I've been told, you can, if you disagree or you don't like it or your doctor tells you different, you do you. But I make sure I get 30 minutes of sun exposure as many days as I can with no sunscreen. And what I was told is to look toward the sun in the morning before 8 a.m. So I try to do that. I try to go outside with as little clothing on as I can. I haven't been able to do it in a long time, but during the summer I do it every day. Minimal clothing, bikini if I can, or if I'm all alone, completely naked, looking toward the sun with no sunscreen on at all to receive as much of that solar energy as possible. I do think there's a connection to that. Now, we don't do that. We wear shoes, we're indoors all day long, we look away from the sun, we put sunglasses on, we slather ourselves in sunscreen. And I understand why we do all of those things. But this is really important because what it underscores is we have lost a lot of our connection to the natural world. We see that as out there. We don't see that as a reflection of ourselves as well. Remember that everything I've taught you, right? That there are different dimensions of reality, and the theory is that plants and nature are one dimension beneath us, right? And then there's us, and then there's like all the magic that happens above us. If you're in an area or an environment that doesn't have sun most of the year, then that's a challenge. And my mother-in-law, who has MS and is much more progressed than I am, lives in Syracuse, right? So is there a correlation, causation? I have no idea. But I'm just saying it underscores the fact that we need nature, and not only do we need nature, but nature and we are not separate. It's not like me and then the plants and the animals, or I'm better than them, or I'm more sentient than them, or we're not in a coexisting relationship. What happens in nature is me, and what's happening to me is nature. And so when we see nature responding in these big ways with these weather patterns shifting in the US at least, which is shocking to us this year, we have to see that we are part of that, right? So part of my message to you tonight, and the reason I want to talk about the elements and I want to talk about Despacho, is we are heading towards spring. You know, we're a northern hemisphere focused company, even though I have employees in the southern hemisphere and a lot of you are southern hem. So I try to always balance that. So some of you are not, you're headed toward the opposite season. We are barreling toward summer, you guys are barreling toward winter, and I recognize that. And we're coming up to spring and you guys are coming up to fall. So there is a little bit of a hemispheric shift, but I'm focusing on spring for us because a lot of us, like I think it's like 80% or 85% of our programs are northern hemisphere. Before spring comes, before the trees blossom, before the trees bloom, it is important to give something to the earth first. And that's what tonight is all about. That's what Despacho is. Now, I'm going to go through all of the basics of Despacho with you tonight. I have a lot of notes to share with you. And these are your worksheets, by the way. So we are in Practicing Magic March 2023, and I'm going to go page by page with you tonight through these worksheets, but I have a lot to share with you that's not on the worksheets too, and this will all be in your notes, okay? The concept of a despacho or an offering is this concept from Q'ero shamanism, Q''ERO shamanism. And you can see that term at the bottom of page 1 on the far left. It's 4 lines up from the bottom, or 5 lines up from the bottom. The Q'ero are the indigenous folks from Peru, and they have their own form of shamanism, their own flavor of shamanism called Q'ero shamanism. The Q'ero shaman that tradition has always resonated with me, partly because I've had 2 teachers, personal teachers, who are trained in Q'ero shamanism practice. So a lot of what I teach you, if it feels like that, smells like that, tastes like that, it's because what your teachers know gets imprinted on you. When you go out into the world, people might recognize some of what I teach you and go, oh, there's kind of a Q'ero shamanistic flavor there. And it's because I've been highly influenced by that, by some of my most important teachers in my lifetime, in my career, both of whom are retired. They still work with me every now and then, but they don't actively work with students. I am finding that a lot of the younger generation of practitioners coming up, I don't see as much of the Q'ero flavor in their work. And so sometimes you have to go more to those countries to experience that in the traditional practice. But yeah, I'm going to give you as much as I can tonight. And like I said, I've got a lot on the page that isn't in your notes, so just stay tuned and I'll try to break it down as simply as I can. Q'ero shamanism is like a 20-layer cake, or an onion, if you will. There's just layer upon layer upon layer. You know me. I'm such a wisdom hound. Like I want to know more and more and more, and I'm really going to try to pack it in tonight. And then if you love this, we can come back and double click on this and keep going deeper, because we're going to get so far tonight. One of the reasons the Q'ero shamanism tradition is so powerful is it's really the last modern vestiges of the Inca civilization. Okay, and in your worksheets it talks about the Inca. The Inca civilization flourished between 1400 and 1533 CE, Common Era, across Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and Argentina. 770,000 square miles with a population of 14 million people. It was the largest empire of its time, larger than the Aztec Empire. So we don't, the Aztecs get a lot of airtime. And I think it's because the Aztec Empire was Mexico, right? And the Aztec Empire has my heart too, because there's so much. I mean, when we look at those central, especially in South American civilizations, there's so much magic there. We've only scratched the surface. And those civilizations were huge. They were thriving. They were powerful. They had highly organized structures. They had incredibly rich and ornate ceremonial practices that put anything we have today to shame, in my personal opinion. We are just just scratching the surface. And there are a lot of practitioners who still really are steeped in those traditions. And I find myself absolutely fascinated by them. I know I've been part of those traditions in past lives because I've seen it in ayahuasca. And it's funny, I had a whole experience with my shaman one time in ayahuasca, and I've told you this story too, where we were in the middle of our work together. And when I do ayahuasca with him, I'm working on medicine and he also takes ayahuasca. So we're both on ayahuasca, but we're talking to each other just like I'm talking to you now. We're awake and lucid and all of that. So we sit up and chat and do things and move around. And there was a moment in one of my ceremonies, not last time, but the time before, so maybe a year and a half ago, where I looked at him and all of a sudden, full feather headdress, full face paint. I mean, he completely shapeshifted right in front of my eyes. And I started calling him by this ceremonial name. And he looked over at me, and I mean, it was not him. It was him, but not him. And he totally recognized the name. And it was him and me kind of unlocking this indigenous past life that he had had. And I could see the feathers. And when he would turn toward me, the feathers would move. I mean, it was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. And then I was laughing at him because I was like, that's your full name, but you have a nickname. And I was calling him by his nickname. Do you remember this? He still remembers it too. I still call him Chicha, which was his nickname because his full name was Chicha Quetzal something, something, something. I have it written down. Yeah, it was a very powerful experience. So these civilizations are alive and well. I know I was there at some point in a past life. So was he. And I think that's how we knew each other. So it's why we have this great connection in this past lifetime or in this lifetime today. So anyway, coming back to Despacho, in the Q'ero tradition, the medicine people are called Pacos, P-A-Q-O-S. And these are all ancient words, right, that come from the Nahuatl language, which some people still speak Nahuatl. It is now more of a dialect. People who are very true to a lot of the traditions still speak Nahuatl. Nahuatl and Spanish sound very different. A friend of mine who's a very powerful shaman recorded a song in a hybrid of Spanish and Nahuatl. And what's interesting, if you're fluent in Spanish like I am, but you're not fluent in Nahuatl, which I'm not, you listen to the song and it's like there's a part where it loses you and you're like, oh, that's Nahuatl, that's the language I can't follow, and then it goes back to Spanish. Will you remind me to post the link to that song later, so that I can share it with you? It's Herbert Quinteros, and he knows a lot of Nahuatl. So I'll post that link to you later so that you can see. A lot of you have seen the video before, but it's powerful because you can track the Spanish, and then he moves into the Nahuatl, and then he goes back to Spanish, and you can hear some of these words like simchi and other words where it's like, that's not Spanish. So you get this kind of fusion, you get this experience of what it means to understand these indigenous languages. Okay, so in the Q'ero tradition, there's this concept of luminous fibers of light, which I would call energy lines, right? Destiny lines. And these lines in the Q'ero tradition connect all of us. You know how I've talked to you about webbing of energy and how you have an energy field when you put your arms out, right? It's the width of your arms. And it's full of these lines. We've talked about cords. Like, this is where it all comes together. Because the Q'ero talked about these cords too, but they don't call them cords. They call them luminous fibers. And these fibers are lines of light that connect you and me. They connect me to Alexis in the room. They connect us to all of each other. They're our energetic Wi-Fi. Okay? And so these luminous fibers, one of the things that despachos do is they strengthen the fibers. They strengthen your Wi-Fi. So you say, well, why does someone make a despacho? We're going to talk about despacho tonight because it's almost spring. I have a lot that I'm hoping to harvest this year. I've put on a lot of effort in the winter planting seeds, haven't you? Seeds of what you want to build and create and grow, because in the wintertime, that's what we do, right? Everything is silent, but we're just quietly out in the garden planting some seeds. We know they can't grow yet, but we're kind of holding the space, right? And then in the spring, what I'm working on in my garden is lots of fertilizer. How do I, now it's getting a little warmer, things are thawing out, now I'm fertilizing, right? Energetically, we are fertilizing, right? We are putting all of these different minerals into the soil, and kind of, you know, making sure that the soil has everything it needs, all the good right conditions in order for those plants now in a few months to emerge. I want you to think about despacho as fertilizer of your dreams, of your visions, of your goals. Like you've invested, right? And even if there's snow where you are, go with the visual of it. Go with the metaphor of it, right? I know, New York, you're screwed, and honestly, we've been screwed for a couple months here too, but it's getting better. You'll get there too. Energetically, you've been seeding, haven't you? Well, if you've been following me, you have, because starting at the winter solstice, I was like, listen, we don't do nothing during winter. Winter is when we rest and incubate and start to catalyze energy from the different directions. Like, if 2023 is going to be what I want it to be, what will it yield? Everything that you manifest has to start as an intention. That's the core wisdom of tonight's class. Everything you've ever created has to start as an intention, right? I even think of like my children. My children in my case were very intentionally conceived. We were trying to have children. I knew when I got pregnant with Nick and with Zoe, and my intention was to have these children, but they were first a thought in my mind and a conversation with that dude in the other room, and then, you know, a boom boom pow, and then, you know, now they're here. But everything that manifests in the world starts as an intention, as a seed, right? The seed has life inside of it that ultimately will bloom. Everything Sage Goddess started as an intention. Wouldn't it be cool if, right? An idea. Everything that you experience around you, every restaurant that you go and eat at, right? Somebody had to say, I'd love to have a pizza shop right here, or I'd like to open a Burger King right there, or it all starts as a thought. Your thoughts create a frequency. The frequency attracts like frequencies. The energy builds, magnifies, and expands. Expanded energy then, once it's grounded, takes foothold in the physical world, and all of a sudden you have a Burger King on Figueroa Street in Carson where there wasn't one before. Somebody had to seed that. The God didn't just put that Burger King there, right? So my broader point is, despachos are offerings, but they're also a way of putting fuel toward your vision quietly. And I love that, because so much of magic, right, is incubation. I have a friend who reached out to me. She's in our collective, but I don't know if she's here tonight. But sometimes she is. So if she's here, she'll know I'm talking about her, but I'm not going to say her name. I don't say names, but it's good to use her as an example. She's working on a project. And just like me with Sage Goddess, I didn't say much about Sage Goddess when I was first starting it. Not even to Dave, because I just didn't want anybody to pee on my parade, you know? So I was just like, I have this idea. I think it's kind of cool. I'm only going to tell the people who I think are going to be super supportive of it or help me think about it, but I'm not going to tell the peasters in my life who are just going to go, you can't do that, or that's stupid, or why would you do that? Even with good intention, like it's not practical or whatever, I'm not going to tell any of those people. I'm just going to sit this little, you know, fetus of mine in the hands of people who I know are going to nurture it until it's ready to come to life. And by the time Sage Goddess actually was like out in the world and anybody knew, it was like, it had some legs, right? So she's the same thing. She's like, I've got this little idea. I'm only telling you and a handful of other people. I think it's kind of magic. I just want to nurture it. I want to keep it close to my chest until it's ready to come forward. Despacho is a way of including your ancestors, your spirit guides, the nature spirits, the 4 elements. It's a way of including all of them with intention. And I'm going to tell you, you can do a big fancy despacho. My last day of teaching at university, I had my doctoral students do a despacho with me. Some of them thought it was really weird, and some of them thought it was great. Everybody did it because it was during class, so they didn't really have a choice. But they could opt in to put an offering in it or not. And then we wrapped it in a traditional way, and we took it and we burned it down in Ocean Beach in San Diego. If you're familiar, you can have bonfires on the beach there. So after class, anybody who wanted to come could come and we burned our despacho, which is a traditional way of releasing it to the earth. I will tell you, every single student from that class came. Even though it was after class time, it was 9 o'clock at night because I taught from 6 to 9 p.m. Every single student came. And we watched that despacho burn. We gathered up the ashes. We dug into the sand. We buried the ashes. We said a prayer. We all held hands in a circle. It was one of the most beautiful teaching moments. And I thought, you know, who's going to actually come at 9 o'clock at night and do this? It was beautiful. It was one of my favorite memories. And I'm so in touch with most of them. They still talk about it. So you can do a big, sexy despacho. I mean, our despacho was like this big because I brought big white sheets of butcher paper, and people were putting stones and shells, and everything has to be organic because you're burning it, so it has to be something that can go back to nature. But people were very thoughtful. They wrote letters to themselves and messages to their ancestors and spirit guides, and we all were really in it together, and it was a beautiful moment. All the way down to the little pot that's in your kit for tonight, if you got your tools. Maybe you don't have a beach where you can bury things, or maybe you don't have big sheets of butcher paper, or maybe you don't have all those things. Your tools for this month can be a despacho, and you can put it right in this pot. If you have a little soil, and come on now, find some dirt. I mean, I didn't send you dirt, but Alexis and I were like sniffing the dirt earlier because it smells really good.
That's good dirt.
I love the smell of dirt and soil. I'm a gardener, so I love it. I just love it, and it does smell very, very wonderful. So we gave you in your tools some little candies. We gave you a yoni shell. We gave you a cowrie shell. And we gave you some stones too. And so if you have this and you have a little soil tonight, you can actually, if you want to do it tonight, or you can do it next week at spring equinox, 2 weeks from now, whenever you want to do it. I'm going to teach you tonight, and then you can do it. I'm going to do it tonight on my own because I'm definitely seeding some things this week. What you do is you set your intention or say your prayer, and you're going to place your little offerings into the soil. And that's it. This is your despacho. And then what I love is, I've taught you this before, but some of you might be new. This is really cool with a little bit of soil in it to keep on your altar. Because when you need to be grounded, stones are great for grounding, but so is soil. All you have to do is just touch this. Left hand to receive it, right hand to send it, and just keep this on your altar. You can put a plant in it, a little tiny one, or no plant. You can put a seed in it and watch the seed grow. You can also use this as a tea light holder, by the way, because we did give you your self-love and self-care tea lights too in your kit. So you can plant a seed, you can plant your offerings, you can do both, you can do neither. And then you also got your, this is the coolest thing I think we've ever made you in the history of SG. People are so mad that this is a class tool because they want it really bad. And I don't love it, but I love being able to say, sorry, it's just for my students. But this is the, we have this separately on the website today if you missed it. This is a quartz plant stake. So what you do is you put the little metal pieces into your pot, and then that hangs over the side. So it sort of magnifies the intentions of your despacho. So that's what I'm doing with mine. You can use moss. You don't have to use soil. Moss is still an earth-based material, right? So I love moss. Love moss. But if you have any plants at all, so even if you didn't get the tools and you just want the little stake, that's in there today. And I just want to remind you, if you put the word heal in your notes, we have a 4-element gemstone set that's a special gift just for you guys right now. I think until midnight tomorrow. So that details about that on your Facebook group, and Alexis will remind me to tell you about that at the end of class. So going back to our notes, where do I want to pick up here? So despacho is an offering to source. Like I said, there are 300 at least, I mean, that we know of, right? Because a lot of these traditions are oral traditions. They're not always written down, but we know of at least 300 different despacho traditions between Peru and Ecuador and Colombia and Argentina. 300 different practices. So there's no way, even if I sat tonight and said my goal tonight is to be an encyclopedia of despacho, there's no way I would be able to give you every possible iteration of this very diverse practice. Sorry, my ears are ringing a little bit. Okay. Despachos are made from the heart. There's no right or wrong way. Don't let the tools of this month limit you. If you're like, Athena, I'm feeling so called to write something down and bury it on a piece of paper, do that. Athena, I'm feeling so called to go get another crystal out of my collection. These stones are not speaking to me. I want to use something else. Do that. I'm trying to think of what else you might feel called to do. Whatever it is, there's no right or wrong way, and I bet you whatever you're feeling called to do is probably part of one of those 300 different iterations of despacho that, like, I'm not going to be able to cover for you tonight. And so I want you to work with your imagination and your intuition, and it may lead you in a direction that surprises you, and there's probably a reason for that. So I want you to feel really open to your vision too. In the Karo tradition, all aspects of life are ceremonial. This is the other thing, and I'll come back to the stones in just a second, so stay with me, because when we do our little planting, we'll go through the stones. The other thing I would change about Western civilization, because I think it would bring us more joy, I think one of the reasons we're so depressed and discouraged and exhausted all the time is we are disconnected from nature, and we have really failed to understand or to remember that every part of life is supposed to be a ceremony. How you cook your food, how you eat your food. Making love is supposed to be a ceremony. Lighting candles at night. In ancient Egypt, we would greet the sun, right? You would bring your hands to your heart, the palms together to your heart. You would raise them up. You would greet the sun. You would spread your arms out, bring your hands down in front of you, and then back up to your heart. At night in the temple, we would greet the moon at sunset. We would all together, silently, in the temples, we would bring our hands to our heart. We would inhale and bring them up. We would greet the moon and bring our hands back down together and to the heart. And then as our children became teenagers, we would initiate them into this. So now they could greet the sun and they could greet the moon. It gives me chills, you know? We would all light the torches in the temples at night. And we would all look forward to that as priests and priestesses, right? It'd be like, oh, it's time to light the torches. We would all burn our ceremonial incense together, right? And that's why I try to bring some of these traditions to you. It's like, are you lighting your incense? Are you lighting your candles? Are you greeting the sun and greeting the moon? Are you blessing your food? Do you think about the ingredients that go into your food? Are you cooking enough of your own meals to be able to do that? A lot of us are just like DoorDash this and, you know, in and out that. I try to cook 2 to 3 times a week. It's, you know, it gets harder because I lose time sometimes, and also because cooking has become really expensive. It's like when avocados are $5 a piece, you start shifting your perspective. But I still do cook at least 2 or 3 times a week, because I like to know what ingredients are going into my food, right? And I try to work with organic ingredients, and I try to be thoughtful as I add the ingredients into the pot and saying thank you to saying thank you to each one of those ingredients for the blessings that it gives. I try to think as I'm eating my food. I try to ask my cells to open and receive all the nutrients, and then I try to invite that food to release its nutrients in a way that's in full alignment with my greatest health. Who does this anymore? You know, when I take a sip of a beverage, now this is it Dr. Pepper? Yes, it's Dr. Pepper. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dr. Pepper is going to, you know, be high vibrational, or my cells are going to receive Dr. Pepper with love. Because shit, I don't think that's true. But I will tell you, I still think there's a way to receive it differently. I have a friend, tea ceremony is another great example. I have a friend, think of this what you will, but it has shifted the way I think about it, because I do like to have wine and I love whiskey. I don't drink it every day, but when I do, my friend is like, you know, the reason, my friend is Native American, my friend says the reason that cigarettes and tobacco and alcohol has become a source of death and illness in our culture is that we don't honor it as sacred. And I have a friend too who's from Mexico who says that the agave plant, right, is less likely to be toxic to your body because it's so holy and sacred. So my friend is always like, if you're going to drink too much, drink tequila or mezcal. Don't drink whiskey, because my friend from Mexico doesn't think whiskey is as sacred as tequila and mezcal. There's an alcoholic beverage in the Q'ero tradition called pisco, I think it is, and they always drink pisco or wine before ceremonies. So alcohol is part of the picture, but not in a, they don't overindulge, and because they honor the plant, they believe that the alcohol does not cause them intoxication, illness, or disease, and that the liver receives it differently. So I think that's interesting, just because I think our culture, and I'm trying to teach my kids this too. You know, it's like, whatever you're going to do, at some point you're going to have a drink. Do it with intention, do it safely, and remember that your alcohol is a plant medicine. It's a plant spirit. And so it has a spirit of its own. So if you honor that plant, it honors you, right? If you drink 10 shots of tequila, is that honoring the agave plant? Like, I don't know. If you have one, glass of tequila and you're sipping it and you're thinking about the plant and you're giving thanks to the plant and you're working with that spirit, I think that's a different experience or relationship to that. And my whole point in this conversation is being in right relationship. That is what Despacho and the Q'ero tradition more generally are all about. Are you in right relationship? Native Americans work with tobacco. It's a sacred plant. It's actually an offering to Great Spirit. But if you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, you won't be on this planet for very long. But I don't think that's being in right relationship with tobacco, which is the grandfather plant that actually taught the Q'ero shaman how to take Banisteriopsis caapi and chacruna and blend those together to make ayahuasca. It's actually tobacco that taught how to make ayahuasca in tobacco ceremony. It's highly sacred. But again, if you smoke 2 packs a day, you're going to be in trouble. Same thing with cacao. Thank you for that, right? Like, a little bit of cacao for me is very sacred. If I drink a big cup of cacao, I will be on the potty for the rest of the night. My stomach just turns if I drink too much cacao. But it's not hot chocolate. Like, you're not supposed to sit there and put whipped cream on it and chug it. You know what I mean? Like, it's cacao. I literally can drink about that much cacao without my stomach turning. And if I do, like, my heart's open and I feel really connected and I feel the sense of beauty and gratitude. If I drink any more than that, my stomach turns and I can't do it, right? So yeah, and if you're confused, we're talking about Q'ero. If you look at your worksheets at the bottom of page 1, you'll see the spelling Q'ero with an apostrophe. Yeah, Q'ero shamanism. And Despacho is also on page 1 of your worksheet. So that's where we are right now. I'm about to go to page 2, but that's what I wanted to share with you on page 1. Now, there's still more I want to talk about. I'm going to see how far I get, and then I'll come back to the rest of my notes. You know me, like, I don't like to leave you hanging without some of those things. The Q'ero, I'm on page 2 now. The Q'ero believe everything is connected. Despachos are a way to show appreciation and gratitude for the crops, the water, the seasons, the land. And I want you to think about it as a gift. It is a gift with intention. I acknowledge you, nature, are not separate from me. I acknowledge that almost everything I enjoy and appreciate about this life comes from the natural world. The food I eat, one day I will return to that natural world and become part of it again, right? So I am in no way disconnected from what's happening outside, and it's a recognition of that. There's also something called a soul calling ritual, which is about channeling life force, connecting with your ancestors. And I do want to talk about that because a lot of the work that the Q'ero shaman do is about connecting you not just with the natural world, but with the members of your family and your lineage that came before you, including your soul lineage or your spiritual lineage, right? So you can also, if you, oh, there's a little friend crawling in mine. I'm like, wait a minute, something's moving.
Was there a little guy?
Look. Hello, darling.
What is it?
He's a little friend. It's a little centipede?
Is it a centipede?
I don't know. You are such a cuteums. Look at you. Are you going to go back in there because you're afraid? Don't do that. You can stay. You actually came up through that little hole there. Now I'm going to be very careful not to be poking my pokers at you. He's coming. He's being summoned. Look. You see him? Look at him right there. I have my hand in the... He's a sweetums.
Centipedes are really scary.
Hello, oh, look, he's going back down in the hole because you scared him.
I didn't scare him.
Alexis?
He scared me. You care more about the centipede than...
Look, he went away. Look, he's gone.
Has
Where-
that centipede been with you for 8 years?
I love you more than that centipede, Alexis. But he literally went back down in there. He was like, holy fuck, that lady's gonna... He's such a cuteums. They can cause damage to your plant. Well, whatever. I love you. It's okay. Where'd you go? Okay. I'm gonna take my little plant sticks out because I don't want to poke him in the behind. Or in one of his little legs. He's such a cuteums.
Dislike bugs. I just
Now you see me using my breath, which is actually a Caro practice. Your breath, so your life force, by the way, which you can use to charge these things. I'm careful now because somebody freaked out one time when we had a ceremony and I used blood, my own blood. So I don't do that so much anymore. I do it in my own practice, but I don't do it in class anymore because I have to be sensitive. Not everybody's into all the things. Your life force is in your saliva, so you can spit on things. Greeks do that. We do. If you know, you will see Greek moms spitting on their children. Don't judge them. They're protecting them. I'm not going to spit on you or your tools or anything. Sometimes I do a little bit of that. Your breath. Oh, he came back out again. Look. Hello. It's because Alexis went back over there and sat down.
I'm back across the room.
She might come back at any minute. He's going back in again. Your breath. Your fluids. Are there children watching? Your cooter shooter fluids. And your blood. So, and your blood is the most powerful because that is the one that marks the boundary between life and death, right? So when I'm doing real big ceremony, I use my extractor needle or just a very sharp needle, just one drop, but I don't do it on, I don't do it publicly now. I'm not here to freak out the kids. It gets a little weird for people sometimes. So you're not going to see me do it live on camera, but like if you lived with me, like once in a while, you would see me over in the corner doing hocus pocus, and you know, you'd be like, well, she's doing her thing. So anyway, I blew on the soil just because I'm setting the intention that he feels safe, and then I'm blowing on him, and I'm leaving it at that. Okay, let's see. The concept behind everything I've taught you tonight is called Ayni in the Quechua tradition. A-Y-N-I. Ayni, A-Y-N-I, means, there's no direct translation to English, but it means reciprocity or mutuality. So it means I give to you, you give to me. Nature's constantly gifting me things. The gems and minerals that we sell here at Sage Goddess, right? Constant gift to Sage Goddess. I give back to the natural world as a way of saying thank you, right? When I walk by my plants in my garden, I'm constantly, right? Or I'll just, as things are growing, I'm just like this all over the garden. You would see me doing that if you were at home with me. Ayni is this concept of reciprocity. I am given and so I give, right? I receive and so I offer. And that's a very important concept in Caro shamanism that you will hear used ceremonially constantly. The other reason I love talking about this concept of Ayni is there always has to be exchange. And I really want you to think about this for a second. It may be one of the most important things we talk about tonight. And I'm going to talk about it on the energetic level first, and then we'll talk about it with regard to despacho, right? In every relationship, there has to be reciprocity. There has to be Ayni. What's also known in Native American practice as sacred exchange, okay? If I am constantly giving you things and you never give anything back, and I don't mean physical things. I mean, somebody can give you $1,000 and you don't have to give them $1,000 back. You can just send them good energy, right? But if you don't give anything, if someone is constantly giving, and you take and take and take, and you never give anything back, not a good thought, not a good wish, not a prayer, not a little bit of tusu, like your spit, or just something back, that is a lack of sacred exchange. And almost every one of our most important native and indigenous traditions honors this, except Western cultures and traditions. Now, you see this sometimes, right? That's why always in the Facebook groups, what I say is, it's okay to come into the Facebook group and say, I need help. Please hold space for me. Please, please, please. I'm having trouble. Could you pray for me? Could you do this? And what I always say is, totally. Once in a while, when you feel strong, come back into the Facebook group and try to give something back. A kind word, comment on somebody's post, a beautiful image or a meme, something to make us laugh. You know what I mean? There has to be reciprocity. And here's how you know when you're out of reciprocity. All of a sudden, the abundance just dries up. So then people are like, well, how come I'm not manifesting? You know, I'm lighting all my candles and I'm saying all the things and I'm spitting on everything and bleeding on everything, you know what I mean? Or not, right? But nothing comes back, right? Or I'm doing all the right things, or I'm a good person or whatever. And it's like, you have to seed before you reap. You know what I mean? You have to sow something in order to get something back. Think about your partnerships and your marital relationships, right? Even if we see that too. It's like, gimme, gimme, gimme. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And it's like, well, when was the last time you did something for that person? For no reason other than just to give, just because you can. And again, I'm not talking about stuff or money or time even. I'm just talking about thoughtfulness. It can be just a simple, I wish wellness for this space. That's enough, because the universe, it's not about whether anybody sees it, really. It's about whether the universe sees it and whether your intentions are in right alignment, right? Yeah, and it's beautiful. Emily's bringing up International Women's Day, which, is, I love that. I think some people struggle with it because of gender specificity and all of that, and I understand gender is fluid, but I still think it's good to celebrate women because we've had a lot of rights denied to us in history, in case you haven't been around, and it's good to celebrate us, once in a while and just say that, right? And then if someone gives you something you don't want, that also necessitates sometimes an exchange, right? You can return that, and that also is a reciprocity. Like, no, I'm not ready to receive that, or that wasn't in right alignment, or I'm going to gift that back to you because it's not for me at this time, right? But what I want you to think about in this concept of Aini is just balancing of the scales, right? Is it like this all the time? You take and take and take and you don't give. Now, my mom was like this. She gave and gave and gave and she never took. That's also not reciprocity. And that leads to resentment. That leads to anger. Because after a while, she was pissed. Like, why am I always, with everybody in my life, giving, 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 and I don't get anything back? And it's like, then take a look at that. That was really my mom's place of healing. Because of the balance, the scales can be out of balance on either direction. You shouldn't be taking more than you give, and you shouldn't be giving more than you take. You should be receiving too. And that's something that the feminine teaches us, right? Like, the feminine is a receptacle. It's a container. It's here to receive. We're here to give, but we're also here to get something back. And if you're not receiving in your life, then you need to look at that. And sometimes it's okay to ask, right? Too. Like, I'm noticing in this relationship, it's a little out of balance, and I feel like I'm constantly pouring in, and I would love to be able to also feel like I'm receiving something. And it doesn't have to be a physical thing or anything that costs money. Like, honestly, it would just be wonderful to hear a word of affirmation, or just a hug or something like that, right? It doesn't have to be a transaction. It's more about equilibrium, right? And it doesn't have to be like for like, eye for an eye, like this very literal thing. I gave you a buck, now you give me a buck. That's not the concept of Aini. Aini can be, I give you a buck and you blow me a kiss because you don't have a buck. You know what I mean? And so I've taught my kids, you might disagree with me, and it's okay if you do. I'm not here to say I'm doing everything right and I'm perfect. When I see someone asking for money, I tend to give something. Now, there are people who will be like, don't do that. Those people are manipulative, right? And in LA, there's a lot. But I try to always give something, even if it's just, maybe I have a quarter in my wallet or $1 in my pocket or whatever. I always try to give a little bit of money when I see people asking. And my kids growing up at first were like, why do you do that? And I said, because I don't know if they're an angel or not. My grandmother told me that angels walk amongst us in human form, and you won't know who they are. And so if I have a little bit and I'm blessed, I'm going to give a little bit. It might not be enough to meet their needs, but it's a gesture. And I always say, may this bless you, right? Because, and may it multiply for you, whatever it is, right? So now my kids do it, and I'm really proud. Like, Zoe will nudge me and go, there's a lady over in the street corner, and we're parked. Can I give her $1 or whatever? Zoe does it now, and Nick does it. It makes me really proud. Now, again, they might grow up having people say, well, why do you do that? And, you know, how do you know they really need it? Is it my job to know if they need it or not? Or is it my job just to try to be an Aini in sacred relationship? And if I have 25 cents to spare, it's kind of a beautiful thing to be able to give it to somebody who maybe that will multiply and become $25 or $250 or $25,000 for them. I don't know. And it's not my job to know. I can leave it there. So anyway, I'm digressing, but that's what I wanted to share with you. Now on page 2, under creating our despacho, and we'll come back, there will be plenty of time for questions. There's many ways to work with despacho. Ours is an offering to us and ultimately an offering back to nature. It's to our bodies, to our ancestors. Very important, it says this on page 2 right here. Nothing fake. When you're giving things to nature, don't put, you know, I don't know what, I mean, I can't even think about what you would put in there that would be weird, but don't put weird shit in there that isn't natural, right? Don't put stuff in there that's going to harm the earth. So don't put like plastic toys or weird shit in there. I'm going to leave it at that. Honestly, I can't, nothing even comes to mind. I don't know what you're going to put in there that'd be weird, but like, don't do that. Don't put weird shit in your despacho. Remember that if you burn it, right, you largely want these things to be able to burn down to ash. If you're giving it to the earth, you want these things to be biodegradable. Don't put fake birds. If you're putting it into the ocean, these are going to float off, right, and ultimately be brought elsewhere on the waves, and so you don't want plastic and other things that are not biodegradable. Candies are good. Did you know that Mama Gaia likes candy? I do too. I got a sweet tooth for days. It's the #1 thing I inherited from my grandmother. I cannot say no to sweet, sweet, sweet things, right? So chocolate, you know, hard candies, sweets, not edible offerings too, in the form of stones, shells. Traditionally what I do are stones and shells and little notes on good paper, biodegradable paper, little bits of plants. My little sage sticks, right, which I taught you can also represent energy cords, and you can use these to narrow cords, but I also like to take these and make these part of my despacho, because what else are you going to do with them, right? You can craft with them, but it's a beautiful way to return some of these to nature too. Yeah, and you don't have to write your offerings on paper, you can write them on leaves. I always use bay leaves because I was raised pagan. It's not my practice today, but I was raised pagan, and pagans write on bay leaves, but you can write on any leaf that you have in your garden and return that to nature too, and that works well as well. So the first layer is the sweetness of life. So I want you to take your, if you're doing it now, do it now. If you're doing it later, then just watch me and then you'll be inspired. If you notice this, in almost every tradition, like even in the you know, traditions where we honor Oshun, right, and some of the magical traditions of the Caribbean, for example, and the honey jars, right, it's the idea of sweetening your blessings. All the spirits like the sweets. If you go down and you see the ofrendas in Mexico during the Days of the Dead, you'll see lots of candies and dulces, right, that the ancestors love. So watch out, little centipede dude. I'm going to put a little sugar bead in here. So again, I like to use saliva or my breath as I set my intention. So my intention, at first I want to work with the broader despacho overall. So I'm gonna go quiet for a minute and just set my intention. I love that we're still under a Virgo full moon, which is all about being clear, being of service, healing, right? So I'm gonna just be quiet for a minute. I'm gonna use my breath, and I'm going to set an intention for my my despacho here. that feels so good. Like I feel so connected to the energy of what I'm putting in here. Do you? You feel connected to it too? Yeah, I love that. Okay, and I'm gonna use my breath. I feel like my intention is being magnified 100-fold because of my centipede friend who is inside of my despacho. I hope you don't leave. Okay, so now I'm going to sweeten the blessing of what I'm creating here. Okay, I hope you're not right there. I'm being so gentle. Okay, so that's layer 1. The lower realm, the sweetness of life, and also the sweetness of you. One of the reasons I love despacho is not just the act of the despacho itself, but it's what it reminds me about myself. I was talking to Dave about this last week. I was watching, there's a video that you can actually find on YouTube. Not that you want to go watch a video of me at a 1.5 old. I think it was 1 or it was 2 maybe. If you search Paracas on YouTube, you're going to find it. It's actually me and my mom and my dad and my brother and my dog, and I think I had just turned 1. But I was watching that video the other day, and I was just thinking to myself how sweet that little Athena was, like gentle and kind of like timid, and I was appreciating looking at it because it's like there's a sweetness in me, there's a sweetness in you. We all come onto this planet with this like incredibly beautiful innocence. Yeah, you can find it if you search in YouTube. Again, not that you would want to, but like Paracas and then 1976. So I think I was 3 actually. You're gonna find, or 74. You'll find it. It's public. It's cute. It's weird. I mean, you'll see my dad and my mom with her beehive hairdo and all that stuff. Anyway, I'm mentioning this because it was such a reminder of how we all come onto this planet and into these lifetimes with this innate sweetness, you know, and we learn fear and we learn grief and we learn anger and we learn, some of us learn hatred and intolerance and all these things as we go on. But I think we come here pretty raw and beautiful. I really do. And so like seeing that video was like, ah, like I want to reconnect with her. You know what I mean? Like I want to collapse those timelines a little bit. So that little candy was like, oh, that's little Athena beans over there, right? Okay. And then the next layer is the layer of flowers, leaves, herbs, stones, shells that represent the middle realm. This represents relationship, right? This represents your physical body. One of the reasons we gave you a cowrie shell is, you know, it's thought to be the yoni, right? The, you know, your cooter. Because it looks like one, right? I don't have to sit here and lecture you about that, right? And do a full drawing for you. I think you've seen one before at some point. So that part of the class will not happen today. Or yeah, so you can use dried flowers or dried herbs. I don't think actually, you know what, I'm going to use a little, because I don't want to poke my little friend. I'm afraid he's going to end up inside of my little yoni shell. So for today, for this, I'm just going to take a little piece of the, actually my little white sage leaf. I'm going to write something on my sage leaf. And because this represents relationship, I'm just going to write it on one tiny piece. And just take that little part of the leaf. And again, I'm just going to, I wish I knew where you were, dude. I'm going to drop it down the side. Okay. Isn't that sweet? Yeah. And then the third realm is the something liquid that we include, which represents the spirit guides, ascended masters, our place in the universe. I also will tell you, I like to use ash for this because it represents the remnants of smoke, right? So I'm going to, instead of pouring liquid onto this, because again, I'm mindful of having a living friend in there, I'm going to take just a little bit of the ash from my shell here, blow my intention onto that, and then I'm just going to, let's see, how do I do this so I can show you? Let me go to the other camera real quick. Just want you to be able to see it. You see it? Just going to take a little bit of the ash right here and sprinkle it on top. Yeah? So that. So that's the third round. You can also use, if you have moon water, that's cool. Because that represents the light of the moon, which is upper realms astral, right? Like coming down and being infused into your little goodums. Yeah, I will. I'll take him outside after class. I don't expect him to live with me forever, but honestly, he is kind of a nice friend. Will you come out one more time? It was really, every time I blew, you came out. Okay. So that was page 2 of your worksheets. Did you see? Okay. So page 3, now I'm going to back up because I'm doing this little tiny version of it, but I do want to macro out and talk to you about, like, if you're going to do the whole shebang of this, okay? Then what you want to do, and on page 3 it talks about this, all of these ingredients then go onto your paper bag. So we gave you these little biodegradable organic paper bags, and I do love these because you can write your all of your intentions, both sides, and then you can put your shells and your stones. And the stones, by the way, I meant to go back to the stones that we gave you. You received natural carnelian, and these are really pretty pieces. Like, there's little bits of quartz in these too. Carnelian represents a lot of different things. Carnelian so you got carnelian, you got aura moss agate, and you got tumbled citrine. So these represent different elements, right? You have air with citrine, you have fire with carnelian, and you have earth with moss agate. And one of the reasons I'm giving you a free 4-element gemstone set with your purchase today, in case you didn't get your tools, is to give you additional elemental stones that you can add into your ofrenda. So these are the 4 stones that are coming. If you shop at sagegoddess.com and put heal in your notes, you're going to get these 4 stones that you see here, which I'm 90% sure is yellow apatite, carnelian, moss agate, moss agate, and then Lemurian blue calcite, which is fire, water, air, and earth. Okay. Because some people didn't get their tools, or they just want more, because maybe you don't want to bury all your stones from class. So now you have a set to keep and a set to bury. And you could work with them together and then keep one set of them on your altar and the other set of them you bury into the earth. So if you don't have this, or you want to do something a little more formal, you can put all of it into your little despacho bag, close the string, and bury that, and this will disintegrate. Now, one of the things I love to do, if you're actually going to make this and bury it, every time I bury a despacho, I did one at the beach that I was telling you about, so I didn't do this in this case, but when I do it in my backyard, I always plant a little plant on top of it. And you won't believe, it grows faster and stronger. So if you're planting something new, always do despacho at the roots of your plants. They will grow faster, they will grow stronger, and they will bloom more. Again, this is fertilizer, right? So yeah, so again, your citrine represents air. All of the golden stones represent air, right? Your moss agate represents earth. All of the green stones, including the black stones and the brown stones, represent earth. Your carnelian represents fire. That's south. So orange and red stones always represent south. Your apatite represents air too. And then the blue and black, blue/black, it's mostly the gray and the brown stones that are earth. The black and blue stones traditionally represent water, or the west. Okay. So yeah, so I'm a planter, right? You know, I planted my whole garden really. Today, as you've seen it many times, did not look like that when I bought my house 8 years ago. There was almost nothing there. and what was there was dying. They had shut off the sprinklers because they had moved out, and so everything was dead. So I basically started from ground zero in my garden, except for my lemon tree. So I planted all the trees and all the plants, and everything you see there now was new from me. And every time I planted something, I did a little despacho at the roots, and I put natural aventurine stones at the roots. So I would work with my friend who's my landscaper, and he would, especially with the big trees, because I couldn't do that on my own. So he would come, and I would be, as he would be putting the root ball in, I would be gritting and putting all of these aventurine stones. And I think that's why my garden flourishes. Everything has, and I still have a huge bowl of just rough, natural, not good quality. Like you wouldn't want to buy it. It's landscape quality, but it's natural green aventurine, and I still have a huge bowl of it in my garden. So even if I'm just planting an herb or a succulent or whatever, it gets a little piece of green aventurine at the root base or the root ball to help it grow. And it doesn't hurt the plant, right? Because the roots will grow around it. But I do love this visual of, like, if you were to see inside my garden down at the root level, it's covered in crystals. But I mean, I didn't put expensive things down there. I've actually thought about selling like not good quality aventurine. I don't have any, but I've thought about sourcing it, like just kind of the stuff that they throw away, because there's some aventurine that nobody wants to buy because it's just so not good. But I've thought about buying it and selling it for like just like, I don't know, 20 cents a piece or something, just for your garden. You know what I mean? Like garden aventurine. So it's not anything you would want on your crystal healing tray, but the energy is there. And so like calling it landscape quartz or landscape aventurine or something like that, or like a pound bag or something for a few bucks so that you would have it for your garden. Kind of a cool concept, right? Because it is hard to find. It's so hard to find because nobody wants to buy it or sell it that you can't even really find it online. I got mine from Brazil. So it's a concept I've thought about, like a little landscaping set of stones. Because you know you're going to bury it. You don't want to spend all the bucks on stones that you're never going to see again, right? I'll try to see if I can do that. For like, nothing. Enough just to cover the shipping of it. Okay, so you can put it in your despacho bag. If you're going to do this with a group, I just want to back up the truck because I really do hope some of you will do this with a group. You're teachers, you have students, you have community members, you lead in-person circles sometimes. God, it would just like bless my heart to know that you're going to take what I'm teaching you tonight and do it with a group. And you don't have to overthink it. It can be very, very simple. You just want to have a big swath of paper. And I will tell you, traditionally in Karo shamanism, it's white paper because that's thought to create a base of purification. So you'll always see white paper in traditional despacho circles. So it can be like white butcher paper, for example. They usually tie it at the end like a package, like pulling up the string from the four directions. When I did it, I laid out a big swath of butcher paper. It was probably, I had almost 100 students in that class. So we laid it out. I think it was like, I want to say it was like 4 feet by 20 feet, the paper that we ended up bundling into this despacho. It was a big ass class, my last class at university. And so I rolled out this big piece of butcher paper, and then I laid twine at an intersection. So I laid twine down the middle so I could tie it easily at the end. And I laid twine down the length of it too, underneath the butcher paper. So at the end, we were just pulling up the sides and pulling up the sides. So 2 long pieces of twine. Again, everything organic. Yeah, so if you're leading journeys like Rochelle leads medicine journeys and stuff, this is one of the coolest things you can do, I think, with your group. And then what I did anyway, is I gave people pens. And I said, write. You can write a poem. You can write your name. You can write your ancestors' names. You can draw pictures. You can... I made sure the ink was good quality, you know what I mean? So again, we weren't putting any chemicals into the earth, but there were different colored pens. And at the end, it looked like a rainbow. It was just so beautiful. Some people took the ink and put it on their fingers and put their handprints on it, right? It was huge. This despacho was, I had a lot of students. But if you have a group of 4 or 6, it doesn't have to be that big. So what I'm saying is tailor the paper size to the size of the group that you're working with, and think about making sure there's enough space for people to, again, you can have stamp pads there and have them putting their handprints down and all of these things. There's so much creativity involved, and you guys are, in so many cases, are better artists than I am, so you're going to have 100 different ideas that I don't have. And if you have really good ideas that I'm not mentioning tonight, I would love for you to mention them in our Facebook group. Maybe we can start a thread like, alternative creative ideas for Despacho, because it's fun to feed off of each other and see what you would do that maybe I didn't think of, right? Just the focus needs to be on it being biodegradable and good to return to Pachamama. Okay, so everybody's writing, they're writing poems, they're writing love letters to their ancestors, they're painting on their hands and doing their fingerprints. I had students who were putting lipstick on and kissing the paper, right? All of this was really, really cool. And I had us all take a moment once we had done the writing portion, before we put anything down on the paper. I had us all take a step back and just look at it together. And it was such a moment for all of us to just go, wow. Each one of you did something that was so incredibly unique. And then I asked them all to bring something organic to the class, right? So some people brought feathers, which I think are beautiful. So there were some peacock feathers or pheasant feathers or, fallen feathers that they had found. Most people brought stones, no duh. I used to take my students on field trips to the crystal shop after class nearby if they wanted to go hang with me and get a coffee and go crystal shopping. So we would often be at the crystal shop together. And so I did one more little crystal shop field trip before Despacho, and some of them were buying crystals specifically for it. As I recall, he donated some too, I think, to our Despacho. This is David Benz down at South American Imports in San Diego. He was a very non-traditional professor, as you can see. Yes, you can use fabric. Some people brought sand, from the ocean, or something that was significant to them. What else were people bringing? Shells, obviously shells, and we lived by the beach. All of us were in San Diego, so we had access to shells. Fabric, candy. A lot of people brought candy. Again, anything that could be dissolved or burned or buried would be safe. And then because I taught you on page 2 about the different realms, you'll want to think about, you could use essential oils. Some people were, pouring essential oils or again, natural, pure, but beautiful perfumes and essential oils onto the page. Some people brought soil I had a student who was living far away from home. And before she left, I think it was Michigan, before she left Michigan, she had brought a vial of soil from her home because she was homesick. And so she put a little bit of her soil from her house there to represent her. I'm trying to think. So all of those things are good. You can put hair. You can put, like I said, your hair also contains your life force. Come on, camera. There we go. Your hair contains your life force too. So you can put your hair. You could spit on it. And you can just touch it with your saliva. You can blow on it. Okay. Now, it's traditional to, there's different ways of thinking about this, okay? I brought the sides up, left to right, which is kind of a traditional way of bringing the sides. And then, again, I did the same thing left to right until it folded into a square. Okay, and we had to kind of fold it multiple times and then fold it multiple times and then fold it multiple times and fold it multiple times. And you're kind of honoring the 4 directions as you bring these energies in. So no, the stones did not burn in ours. So that was what was left, and that's what we buried with the ash. So, but everything else burned. And because people had put essential oils in it, I remember standing next to that fire, you guys, like it was yesterday. This was 2011, 2010. This was 2010, May of 2010. So 13 years ago in 2 months. But I remember it like it was yesterday because I could smell the oils. So it was like the smell of the fire and then the essential oils that people had dropped onto the sheet. So it was like a waft of lavender or a waft of rose or it's like just layers and layers and layers. And because we were all so in the moment and we were just inhaling and exhaling and like breathing together, and you can actually do that as an exercise, like inhale together and exhale together and inhale, because if you're burning it, like here we can do it out at Dockweiler. That's the only beach here in SoCal where it's legal to have a bonfire, so you can go to Dockweiler and do this, or maybe you have a place near you. Like inhale together and exhale together. It was just like this. The Despacho was breathing because it was burning and it was releasing, and it was like we were breathing and we were all holding hands. It was wholly sacred. And we all stood there really very much in silence watching this go back to the earth as it burned, and just being fully present. I mean, you want to talk about embodiment and being in the moment and just all your senses are activated because the fire is warm and the oils smell beautiful, and you've got the love of the connection of everybody in the circle. And I remember saying, like, through your left hand send love, and it would come back in your right, and through your left hand send peace, and it would come back through your right, and through your left hand send joy, and it would come back through the right. And we're all feeling this. So that's why I want to inspire you. Like, this is a cool thing to do. I don't know, I was teaching at a Catholic university at the time, so I don't know that they would have loved it if it wasn't my last class of my entire career, because I had retired. But I was retiring to go into the private sector, but I don't know that I would have done it like every semester, because it may have gotten weird. The Catholics don't do despacho, you know, but I always say the Catholics are very ceremonial. As a non-Catholic, I think I can say that, but sometimes this stuff freaks them out a little bit, so you got to be careful. There's a fine line between ceremony and freaky. And then, so you tie it all up, and then you can either bury it, or you can burn it, or you can gift it to the ocean. Those are really the three ways of releasing your despacho back to the earth. We did one very similar at a moon ceremony back at SG. We sure did. I've done them across the years with different groups for different purposes, never as elaborate as the one that I'm talking about here, but we did do one, Lauren. We absolutely did. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as you release it, ask that the mother receives your offering with love and gratitude, just as it was created. So you say, Great Mother, Pachamama. Pacha means earth, mama means mother. Pachamama, receive this blessing with the same gratitude and love and intention with which it was created. Right? So she'll receive it the way you sent it. Despacho is a profoundly personal sacred ceremony, but it can also be a highly collective and intentional and bonding experience. I love the idea too. I've never done it. I've officiated quite a few weddings, including for Lauren and her beloved Rock. But I've never done it as part of a wedding ceremony. But wouldn't a wedding despacho for the wedding party be beautiful before the ceremony? Like, to get the whole wedding party together and have everybody write their intentions for the couple. I'm just thinking about this now. Like, maybe next time I marry somebody, I'll do it. And then have them all put an offering in it, right? And then you know, we take it and we bury it on the land where they're going to be married together or something like that. I just think that would be a really cool. In the moment, I'm thinking, I'm going to try that. I have to have an open-minded couple, but I usually don't marry closed-minded people to each other. It's kind of not my jam. I don't do it like for money. I only do it if I do it for free. So I get to pick and choose who I marry, and but that would be really beautiful, I think, for a bridal party, or even for everybody who's at a wedding. If they're usually there's some kind of you know what I mean? There's usually somebody at every wedding I've officiated. Not Lauren's, but there's usually somebody who's kind of a fuddy-duddy. Who'd be like, I don't want to do that. I have to watch out, right? Because I'll be officiating and I'll look out at the crowd, and there's usually one person who's like, what's she doing? Everybody else is like, oh yeah. And there's one person who's like, look like they're sucking on a lemon. So maybe it's best with the bridal party if they're all on the same page. We could do that. Okay. So, now, the last thing I wanted to say to you before I turn it over to questions, there's always one. One in every crowd, everybody. God bless them. You know what I mean. I always just send them with a breath of love. Hope you're having a good time. Joe Bob Fuddy Duddy. I wanted to say briefly about the magician archetype, and then we can talk more about this if you're interested. In the shamanistic traditions, there are 3 animal spirit guardians of the 3 worlds, which we're going to be working with for Elder Council coming up. Remember that your Elder Council tools, which Elder Council is coming up in a couple of weeks, are available now. So you could buy those tonight and say heal in your notes to get your 4. If you're like, I don't know what to get, maybe your Elder Council tools, because we're doing a shamanic journey together in Elder Council this year. So we're studying the three worlds. So the lower world is always snake. Snake represents transformation, and it's the animal spirit ally that helps guide you into the lower world, which is the world of the bones and the stones and the minerals. And then the middle world ally in Karo shamanism, which is on your art too, is the jaguar. And jaguar for me, and panther too for me, is often a middle world ally. Kind of helps you see in the darkness. It's very stealth, but also very fast and very accurate, and helps you navigate difficult terrain. And then the upper world ally is the condor. And condor helps you see over the expanse, right? It helps you have that higher level view so that you're not missing the details. So you can see accurately what's happening in the middle world and in the lower world. I also like to think about the animal spirit allies aligned to the elements. So jaguar, panther, there's many more, but connected to earth. Condor, eagle, hawk, connected to air. Whale, dolphin, for me, are my favorite water element, Western guardians. And then dragon and the phoenix for me. But again, also snake, scorpion. These are direction of south and lower world guardians as well. Some of them are more mystical, like dragon and phoenix, for example, and some of them are more accurate, right? Available in the physical world. So one of the things I want you to think about when you put your despacho together, which is not traditional to Karo shamanism, but it's my little overlay, because you know me, I'm like a hybrid, right? Like I blend these little bits and pieces. Like I still honor a lot of the elements of my pagan training growing up because it's a tradition I respect. I still honor a lot of my Christian tradition and roots. I still honor these Karo shamanistic roots and traditions that my teachers have taught me over the years. And there's other traditions I've been influenced by too. Buddhism, for example. I've been heavily influenced by the Buddhist path. But I like the idea that you don't just have things in there that represent the lower world, middle world, and upper world, but you have things in there if you're going to embody this archetype of the magician, that I am here on this planet to learn how to use my tools. My intellect, my love, my physical body, my spirit, the element of fire to transform, the element of air to see clearly, the element of water to purify, the element of earth to transmute and ground. I am here to learn how to use those elements and the tools associated with those elements to shift and transform and grow and heal myself, and then by extension to shift and transform and help other people heal and grow. That to me is what the magician archetype is all about. And that's the root and the core of what living magic is. That's my why for this year of this class. My why is, I think you're here to learn how to incorporate these different aspects and facets. Every class you take, I don't know about you, I remember very little of the details of the classes I took in college. What I remember are the poignant moments of the most impactful classes taught by the best professors. Those are the things that stand out to me, right? So I have snapshots of things I really remember, and a lot of it's a blur. All classes are like that. You are not meant to memorize every word I say and jot it all down and do everything I do by the book. What my hope is that I'm going to expose you to such a swath, such a breadth of different concepts and ideas and traditions, and some of them are really going to stick with you. Like you're always going to plant something sweet in a stone when you plant a plant in your garden, because that's going to sweeten the blessings and help that plant grow. Or you're going to really develop a deeper relationship with some tool or symbol for each one of the elements, because you're a magician and you're going to cultivate that relationship with fire, for example, in candles, or with aromatherapy for the element of water, or you're going to make moon water at every full moon because that's your way of working with water. But I think if you're going to embody that magician archetype, right, which is the point of being in a class like Living Magic, the way to live magic is to take a little bit from everybody that you learn from. And I'm one of many teachers, right, in your world. And if you're like me, I think of my kids as my teachers. I think of my team members as my teachers. I think of people I watch reels from on Instagram as my teachers. Like I'm pulling, right, and synthesizing. And I'm taking the best of what makes sense and letting the rest go, which is the Buddhist path, right? But I really want you to start to ask yourself this month, this is kind of the last takeaway from tonight's class, am I being intentional about embodying the magician as a way of living magic, right? So when I cook, I'm alchemizing, right? I'm taking raw ingredients and alchemizing them, heating them through the element of fire, right? To transform them into something else. I'm making banana nut muffins tomorrow. So like, cause I've got ripe bananas. I'm taking my bananas and my walnuts that I'm going to toast and my chocolate chips and my, flour and my sugar and all of my things. And I'm alchemizing them to make something else and sending blessings into them and sweetening those, as I add the sugar, imagining that whoever eats these and asking everybody's cells to open to receive them in a good way, right? That's the point of this class. So that, again, and the connection back to the Karo tradition is every aspect of life is ceremonial. That's the difference between slapping stuff in a lunchbox and making sure it's in your kid's backpack and buy, to like being as thoughtful as you can. I wasn't thoughtful every time I packed a lunch, but I tried to be. Every time I packed a lunch for Zoe, I drew a little rose on her lunch bag, and I would blow on it for peace for her for that day, right? Or, when I bake or when I cook or when I make love or when I, plant a plant or when I, even with my own body, I dry brush every day and you're supposed to dry brush it towards your heart. I do it every day and I'm like, bringing all of my energy toward the center of my chakra system. Not only does it improve circulation, but it's like everything comes back to my heart. Am I heart centered? Am I living that way, right? Am I bringing everything in toward the most important organ in my body and giving thanks to my heart for the hard work that it does? And it doesn't mean you're going to do everything right all the time. Some days you're going to be in a bad mood. You're going to get through your day. You're going to go home. You're going to have some Jack Daniels and just get in bed and screw the world. But for the most part, you have moments in your day when you can be really thoughtful and go, is that air or water or earth or fire? And how can I transform this into something different? And then can I share that so that my kids or my neighbors or my girlfriend or can I post about it in social media so that somebody else goes, oh, I never thought about that. I could do that too. Or if you're a teacher, your students, right? Okay. I'm going to stop now and turn it over to you for questions. I hope you enjoyed tonight's class because with the same intention that I created it. Amen, aho, and so it is, right? Well, that's what I was saying, Michelle. I'm always going to be straight up honest with you. I have bad days. I have grump roast days. I have days where I flip a person off on the freeway. Not a lot of days, but I'm human. I will never tell you like, oh, in every moment of every day, I am placing my saliva with love and affection. No. And there are some days where I drop, my kid off at school and I'm like, bye. They've been a jerk the whole ride. I'm like, I hope you have a good day. Bye. I'm never going to lie to you. Like, that is just not how it goes. Juniper says, an Andean healer who teaches a shamanism course stated that these things are for everyone now in response to people saying that he shouldn't teach outside his own culture. Yeah, I think, what's really interesting about you saying that? Because there are people who are like, these are closed traditions or closed practices. I'm hearing less of that now. There's a shift happening on the planet where we're recognizing that, like, that this concept of oneness is not just something in a textbook. Like, we really are all uniquely and intricately connected. And so, yeah, I'm seeing a shift in how people are like, don't do this and don't do that, and you can't do this and you can't do that, right? Here's what I always say: with respect. That's what my teacher taught me in Spanish. With respect. I feel the same way about my traditions, with respect. You want to work with my tradition and it's not your tradition, that's fine with me. Learn it well and do it with respect. Don't be throwing stuff around and abusing it, and, with respect. Con respeto, right? Always. Yeah. Can I bury Tara's asking, can I bury it in the dirt next week after my infusion? Yes, of course you can. There's no wrong time to do this. Some people, Tara, love to do it at a new moon, which is not the phase we're in, in a perfect world, I like to plant new plants in my garden at the new moon, but there are times where a plant arrives and it's dry and I've just got to get it in the ground, and I'm not going to be able to wait for a new moon. So there's that too, right? So, but I think it has to be meaningful to you, and I love the idea that you would time it up with your infusion. I think that's a fantastic idea. Yes, you can. Jen, you absolutely can. Yeah, so those are all your options. Like, you can use the little pot with dirt if you don't want to do the bag. You can do both. You can do just the little bag in your garden. You can not do any of that and use paper and do it like the proper way, which is fold, 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 wrap it up, tie it. Almost looks like a gift, like a holiday gift, you know? Janelle says, I live in the dry climate of southern New Mexico. Janelle, looks like your comment got cut off, but I want to know what you're talking about with New Mexico, so can you let me know? Jen wants to know about dry brushing. I wish I had one here to show you. Let's pretend this is a dry brush. Dry brushing is, I do it because I don't genetically have great skin. My family tends to like wrinkle up a lot, and by my age my mom had like a lot of like crepey skin and like just things that I didn't want that. And so I learned early on, actually from her, as she got into her later years, she learned about it. And then I have a lot of friends like Yasmina who swear by it, and Yasmina has better arms than I do at almost 70 years old. So dry brushing is a way of exfoliating your skin so that you don't get wrinkles and crepiness. And I dry brush my whole body, including my face. I'm very gentle on from here up, and I'm also gentle on my neck, but I dry brush here. Like, you know how sometimes you get crepey here, like wrinkly and like tough skin here? You got to dry brush here. And then your arms, the back of your arms, like if you get those little bumps and weird things, that takes all that off. I dry brush my abdomen, the backs of my legs, the tops of my legs. It just keeps you from getting crepey, loose skin. And so you can go on Amazon and get a dry brush. They're super cheap. You can get them at Whole Foods. Trader Joe's has them. It's a thing. And if you go on YouTube, like there's people have asked me to do tutorials, but it's like, I honestly don't think my tutorial would be even as good as most of the stuff that's on YouTube. So just go on Yasmina on her Instagram, in her videos, has a whole video about dry brushing. And then she's got a back scrubber that she uses, like it gets your whole back exfoliated. I do my whole body every day or every other day at a minimum. It's very common in Japan and in Korea. They dry brush, so it creates circulation, so it improves circulation. I mean, if you read the health benefits, it's insane. It prevents ingrown hairs. I never get ingrown hairs. My mom constantly had ingrown hair. I never get ingrowns from that, because it's constantly exfoliating. The reason men don't age on their face the way women do is because they shave, and every day they're exfoliating their cheeks. So we get these lines, most women do. I exfoliate my face every day, which is why I don't have them. I use gua sha and I dry brush. But like I said, I come from a long line of very wrinkled people. So gua sha, dry brushing, men don't age here because they shave. You just want to see me naked? I'm cute naked, kind of. I mean, for 50. It wouldn't impress you all that much, but, you know, it's not bad. I don't know how we got here, but it's kind of weird, but I'm okay with it. Paulette says, what should we add to our plants we plant? I planted 5 baby white sage. Ah, and they're thriving. 2 are only okay in the front, different soil. So there's a couple of different really good fertilizers. Do you want me to take some pictures of the stuff that I have at home? There's one I have, and I can't remember what it is, but it's been so good for my garden this year, and it's in a gallon container. I got it off Amazon. Do you want me to take a picture? Just, Karen, can you remind me, and I'll take a picture of the jug, and we can post it. It's been really good. There's lots of different, if you start getting into the whole world of fertilizers, which is a rabbit hole, I was really lucky because one of my friends from high school, he passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately, but he actually came over during COVID because he's so good at fertilizing, and he went through my whole garden and diagnosed what was wrong with all my plants and was like, this one needs magnesium, and this one needs nitrogen, and this one needs this, and he had me buy them all separately and then mix. And he had me go on eBay and get this kit of all the different fertilizers, and like I had spray bottles and I had gallon bottles, and he was having me do all of this like kind of scientific fertilizing. But there is one thing I got on Amazon, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but if you remind me, I'll post a picture of it. Men do need eye cream. They get all wrinkly here, but they don't get wrinkly here because they shave. It was Tim. It was Tim who brought me oranges and fertilized my garden, and then had a heart attack right after COVID. Broke my heart. Actually, so I used to cook for him. He used to bring me oranges, and then I would cook for him and send him on the road back to Ventura where he lived with a meal, and I always let him pick what he wanted. And his last request was he wanted chicken fettuccine Alfredo with garlic bread, and I made him chocolate chip cookies. And I private messaged him, and I was like, hey, how are you? Did you get home safe or whatever? And he didn't write back. And the next day I private messaged him again, and he didn't write back. And then I went to his timeline, and it was like, we're gonna miss you, won't be the same without you. And I remember just sitting on the couch and like literally just, I couldn't find my feet for a minute. Yeah, he was my second boyfriend in 7th grade. And by boyfriend, I mean somebody that I ate lunch with and walked around campus with and then never talked to outside of that. But so we were very platonic, but he was a wonderful soul. I miss him. Miss you, Tim. So smart. I mean, we all called him a medicine man, and I never heard him refer to himself that way, but he was a medicine man. Hard to believe. I think it's been almost exactly 2 or 3 years now since he died. Couldn't find my feet, my friends. He knows I love oranges, and he would bring me oranges from Ventura that are really sweet. Well, it's okay. You don't have to do the planting yourself. Your gardeners can do it, but you got to fertilize it, Paulette. A lot of stuff I don't plant because I can't lift heavy things physically. So my friend who's a who's a landscaper, does everything that's heavy. The little things I do, like, and I transplant my own plants and stuff, but like the big things he does. But he always knows, like, he's always like, do you want to put crystals in this? We're doing crystals, right? We always do crystals at the roots, right? So yeah. Yeah. It's always, when it's untimely, it's always so hard, Were despachos done before burying the dead? Yes, in some cases. In some of the traditions, Danielle, but like I said, there's 300 different iterations of this. So some traditions did it before they buried the dead. Some traditions did it after they buried the dead. And then some traditions did it when people were chronically ill to prevent death, right? As a way of like calling in life and life force energy and all those things. So it's kind of like, that's why I'm saying, if you feel called to do it one way or you feel called to do it a different way, it's not like there's a right and wrong. And your intuition is probably the best guide, because if you were to look at, I really want you to think 300 different ways. I'm not saying 3 different ways, 300 different ways. And it's all unique to the region, because in Northern Colombia, they do things one way. In Southern Colombia, they do things another way, which is very true. And in Peru, for goodness sake, I mean, depending on what part of, Peru you're in, you're really going to see a difference. And sometimes it's a nuanced difference, and sometimes it's others. So yeah, I've got to post the Herbert Quinteros video, which you will love. And you'll, again, if you speak Spanish like I do, you'll hear when he slips into Nahuatl. You'll hear the little, what word is that? And then I need to post the fertilizer. And I think there was one other thing I was going to give you tonight. So I've got some deliverables coming out of tonight's class I have to remember. Seaweed fertilizer is really good too. And I think it was Kaz, wasn't it, who turned me on to seaweed fertilizer? And I have that too. I'm pretty sure this other thing I'm thinking of is something else. Fish emulsion is really good too. Really good too. I remember one time Tim said that one of my favorite things he said was, most of your plants need magnesium. And I was like, I know. And he goes, so do you. And I said, I do. And he's like, he looked at me and he goes, ladies who don't take magnesium get a little crazy. I'll never forget it. And so I have never missed a day of magnesium since he told me that. I'm like, is he telling me I'm crazy? But we all do. He's like, plants need it. And he's like, I don't know, any lady who doesn't need magnesium. Makes them a little crazy when they don't have magnesium. It's true. Helps you with regular bowel movements. We're talking about despachos. We can talk about poops. Yeah, dermaplaning too. I don't do fascia work, which is like the, because it bruises you, and I bruise really easily as it is. So I can't do fascia work. If you look up fascia, Fascia. It's really like deep tissue work. I like to dry brush, and I'm pretty aggressive about it, but I don't get in there and do the stuff that bruises you. I don't like to look bruised all the time. So, yeah. Ooh, dirty fish tank water? I bet your plants do love that, Bianca. That's kind of brilliant. And I have fish tanks. I should do that. I should have them save the water. Gosh, this is why I love these chats, because I know I'm teaching you some stuff tonight, but I learn stuff all the time too. And right now they're just throwing that water away. I'm putting my thinking cap on. Epsom salt under the roots, Angela says, before planting. Yeah, no, it bruises the crap out of you. But I have a friend who does it, and she's like, Athena, because my stomach is pretty flat, but I had a C-section. So it's not perfectly flat, but it's pretty good. She's like, Athena, that would be gone if you would just do the fascia work. And she like, because she does it, and she's got abs, and she says it's just from her fascia work. But her stomach is bruised like half the time. She looks like somebody just punched her all the time, and I'm like, I don't want that. I'd rather have, you know, not a perfectly flat stomach and not look like somebody is beating on me. Let's see. Magnesium. I have 2 types of magnesium. Lauren turned me on to a chewable because I'm allergic to gummy things. But there are the Calm gummies, and my kids take that. So kids take Calm, and I take the one that Lauren, who's in our feed right now, recommended to me. Lauren, do you have that Amazon link? What's wrong?
I heard you mentioning magnesium.
Oh.
And I also take the Calm gummies. I do the raspberry lemonade flavored ones. I do 2 in the morning and 2 at nighttime, and that combined with a little bit of CBD oil has been helping me immensely manage my anxiety. So.
Yep. Yeah, I do it for my kids for regularity and anxiety. Yeah. But the one that Lauren turned me on to, I really love. So if Lauren's here, and if she's not, I'll take a picture of that too, because I have it in my cabinet at home. Trader Joe's has good magnesium, Lola Bunny's telling us. Tanya's talking about making seaweed tea. Very smart. Tea is really good for your plants, right? So anything that you want to steep, it's almost like, you know, it's like composting kind of, right? But it's like steeping all of that into a tea. One of Yasmina's friends, Belinda Clements, who you should also follow on Instagram. I mean, you want to talk about people who will inspire you all day long? Holy shit. Her house in Santa Cruz, I've never seen anything like it. She's a mixed media collage artist, and she's collaged the walls and her furniture. I mean, it's just like, whoa. I've never seen a garden thrive like hers, and she said it's all compost tea. She makes her compost, and then she makes a tea out of it, and that's what she uses in her garden.
Karen just reminded me that you wanted to.
Yeah, I do want to show you this real quick. Okay. Yeah, you take it with your electrolytes. It's good for you. Some plants like eggshells, Bonnie was saying, that's helpful too. It makes sense. I saw a recipe for lasagna. I was telling my dad about this a couple days ago. My sister works for Williams Sonoma, and she does their book tours. So there's the Pasta Queen, I think her name is. So she's kind of turned me on to her because they become friends. And the Pasta Queen, her secret ingredient in her lasagna, boiled eggs. She does a layer of sauce, layer of noodles, layer of meat, and then she chops up boiled eggs. And she's like, people tell me my lasagna is the best they've ever had. And when I, like, what's the secret? And I tell them boiled eggs, and at first they're like, ooh. I haven't tried it yet, but how do you represent air on your altar, Rosemarie? Feathers. Also your smudging herbs, right? Because when you burn them, the smoke represents air. So feathers and air are the easiest ways. And then the stones of the East, right? So in your little freebie foursome, I'm giving you yellow apatite, but also citrine, yellow aventurine, golden healer, because in the Lakota medicine wheel, the direction of East is yellow, like the rising sun. So that's a great question too. I love this. This is so fun. Animal bones. Or like if you're cooking chicken, I've heard this too, like if you cook whole chickens, if you roast chicken, save all the bones. Angela says break them down to powder and you have bone meal for your plants. I like that too. Let's see. I'm going back up. Vanya says, Athena, could you touch on the best way to release the elements based on our charts? Yeah, I love that too. Do you mean releasing the elements or releasing to the elements? Because we've talked about this a little bit, but it bears talking about again in the context of tonight's class about being the magician, right? So I'm heavy fire. Most of my chart is fire, as you know. So that means releasing to fire. So I like to make fires. I have a fire pit at home. Candlelight, right? So you light your candle, you write whatever you want to release on a leaf, like a bay leaf, which is, again, that's my default go-to, but you can do whatever you want. And then let that burn out on your shell with your white sage and your ash. Releasing to water, it's best if you can release to a running body of water. So if you live near a river or a lake or an ocean or something like that, that's the best way to release to water. Releasing to earth is about burial, you know, for me. And that's a beautiful way of releasing too. A lot of people believe in releasing. The native way is to release to the east, because that begins a new cycle. So we let go of things in the east, which is the origin of the medicine wheel, so that we open a new door, a new cycle. What did I miss? And releasing to air, right? Ash, right? So burning things down to ash and then using your breath or letting the winds take it. But I'm glad you asked that. And that's, you know, that's also a way of activating those elements too. So if we can release to the elements, and we can activate energy with the elements too. And if you don't know, by the way, some of you are like, oh, I know that, but some of you might not know that. So I always like to say it. When you pull up your natal chart, there's a little chart at usually at the lower left, that says E, A, F, W, Earth, Air, Fire, Water, whatever order. And it shows you how many planets you have in each one of the elements, so that you can see what the dominant profile is in your chart, right? And then it'll say cardinal, fixed, mutable, CFM at the top, which are the qualities. Tonight we're really dealing with the elements, not so much with the qualities. We've talked about those, though, in astrology before. So if you want to know, like, well, how do I know if I'm heavy on fire or heavy on earth or heavy on air, you're going to want to pull up your natal chart, and then you're going to look at that little box that has it's a 4x3, and you're going to look at those 4 lines and kind of count your planets. You look at mine, it's like, well, there's no question. There's like one little lonely Mercury in Cancer, and I got no water other than that, right? But I'm not here for that. My south node is in Cancer, so water's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to do fire and then air and then earth, are my 3 in that sort of descending order. So I'm here to create, right, and combust. I'm here to think and be intellectual. I'm here to kind of ground and then not feel anything. I'll let other people do the feeling. But that's how you can kind of know, like, how do I know if I'm a priestess of fire? It's really based on your dominant element. So I'm glad you asked that, because that was a great question. And I hope you had a beautiful birthday yesterday. Yeah, like Lola's overflowing with water. And like my daughter's all water, and my son is like, has a good chunk. So what I found is, like, the elements have come to me through other people. Dave is like walking, talking earth. He's the boulder to my cloud, right? Which sucks sometimes, but it's also really great. He always says, like, if I wasn't here, you would just like float away and into the, you know, into the next dimension, which is probably true. You're so welcome, everybody. This is so good. Well, I'm glad this was really helpful for you. And I will say, if you have additional questions, because we're at our time, and I need to go take care of my ear, because I am on the cusp of a ear infection, unfortunately. It's so crazy, as if you missed the beginning, I was supposed to be here at the office all day, but I ended up not getting here until late, because my son called from school and was like, I can't hear on one side, and like it's throbbing and popping, and I'm in so much pain. So I had to take him to the urgent care, and he and I both just finished antibiotics for a sinus infection, and the doctor's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, I'm all right. And then I swear I get here and I'm like, oh no, I have the same damn thing that Nick just said he had. So Dave is actually with Nick right now at another urgent care to get a second opinion, and I asked him to just ask the doctor to call in for me, whatever they call in for him, because I swear it was like not even an hour and a half after his appointment, I was like, for reals? So anyway, I had to reschedule a reading for tonight from the Black Friday giveaway, and I feel terrible, but I will reschedule soon and get some rest. Thank you, Karen, as always. Thank you, all of you. I loved this class. I hope you loved it too. It was super duper fun. I'll be coming to you either tomorrow or Friday with living questions for this week in our Facebook group. And yeah, I'm going to do all the homeopathic things. I don't like when they flush it and pop it like it's hot and stuff. I'm going to try to do some homeopathic stuff. So On we go. This weather has got to improve, and then that will make a big difference, I think, too. But thank you for being here. I hope that you enjoyed every minute. And like I said, if the questions are still coming, please feel free to go into the Facebook group. Would love to continue the conversation there. I will post all the things I promised. Karen will task me out for that. If you are shopping at sagegoddess.com, your code is Luna for 23% off. If you put heal in your notes today or tomorrow, you're going to get the 4 element stone set. And then I do want to show you a sneak peek of something for tomorrow, which I normally don't do during class. But you guys have asked me to bring this to you for so long, I can't even keep track anymore. God, look at this piece, Karen. I've never seen dioptase with that, which I have to look into. I'm not sure what the inclusion is there. This is Congo Emerald, but polished pieces. These are coming to sagegoddess.com tomorrow. I got these in Tucson. This is the Lineage Healing Stone. I've had raw dioptase for you before, but I haven't had polished pieces for your crystal healing tray. Yeah, and you can still use heal. So if you are like, well, I'd rather shop tomorrow, you can get these tomorrow. These will be live at 7 a.m. But I'm letting you guys know early because I think there's like 60 of one size and something else of the other. It's so rare. I have one piece of polished dioptase in my entire collection, and it's one of my top 10 favorite stones of all time because it heals the 7 generations. So it's about healing your ancestors behind you and your ancestors ahead of you. sagegoddess.com tomorrow. And don't tell anybody, because what's the point of giving you a sneaker peeker if everybody knows? So dioptase polished pieces are coming tomorrow to the website from Tucson. We all squealed like little kids, like, eek! Dioptase polished, oh my god! So anyway, that's tomorrow.